Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is me looking at why our default setting is to automatically give in to minorities' demands. Now, what I think's happened here is we've went full circle. Whereas, probably a long time ago, not just the UK, but society in general, maybe just didn't listen to anybody that was in any minority groups. I'm quite happy to accept that may have been where we were a long time ago. But it's certainly not where we are today. And what happens today is, if any minority feel oppressed at all or wish anything from the rest of society, the default setting of society tends to be, let's give them what they want, regardless of the consequences to the majority. Now, I'm not suggesting for a minute we should stop helping minority groups when they have valid issues that they want the rest of society to accept. And I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, gay men were not allowed to get married, lesbians were not allowed to be married to each other. Now they can. So what happened in that instance was fair. When a minority group make society aware of something that they feel isn't fair and isn't just. And the rest of society look at it and think, well, it ain't going to really affect anybody else. It's not going to affect the majority negatively. So we'll go ahead with that. And there would have been some people for obviously religious beliefs that just cannot accept the fact that men can marry men and women can marry women. However, I think it's fair to accept that the majority were not, didn't mean anything to the rest, and nobody's life was really affected by changing legislation to allow a man to marry a man and a woman to marry a woman. So that's an instance and an example of when the minority wanted to change something in society, and society changed, and it didn't really have any negative at all to anybody else. So it was fine. But that's not the case today. We have people just demanding now, when they're in a minority, that the rest of society should accept what they want and their beliefs. And I'll give you an example of that, what we're seeing happening with the gender issue just now, where some people believe that a man can become a woman just because he says so. And that's not right. And the reason that we can't accept that just because that's what some in the minority feel makes them oppressed in some fantasy world where their ideology may have led them, doesn't mean it's right. And it doesn't mean it does not affect the majority. And the reason being, if we're to accept that, then it affects so many things. If we just say, okay then, a man can be a woman by his own decision. We've seen it already, we've got problems with safe places. We've got problems even with rape crisis centres in Edinburgh and other places across the UK. We see the problem with women in sports, where opportunities for women to go to Olympic Games are getting taken because a man's going, and medals and prize money and all this stuff all gets affected if society just carte blanche accept the minority who want to change something. It's got to change for the better of all humanity and all of society. And I think it is, to be honest with you. Because the amount of stuff, before we had we've not got enough whatever coloured a person or whatever sex a person or whatever religion of person in a particular job role. Then society went, well, we need to sort that. So we need to say, well, there's 9% of people fit that criteria. We must have 9% of them in certain roles. And this whole industry of inclusiveness came about. And it was a bit bonkers, because getting a job should be based on your ability to do the job and being the best candidate available for the job. Not what skin colour you are, what sexual organs you've got, what God you believe in, or none. That should not come into it. What should come into it is, are you the best person for the job? Now, there are certain exceptions to that, obviously. Right, you couldn't demand being an atheist and demand to be given fair chance of being a job as a clergyman, right? That'd just be bonkers. you have to have protection there, whereby ridiculously we had a man as the CEO of a rape crisis centre in Edinburgh. A man pretending to be a woman, nonetheless, and demanding it's crazy things like the victims in this rape crisis centre had to accept queer ideology or possibly not be treated by the centre. So that's us taking it to the mental degrees, right? But this stuff happens. And this is the stuff that happens when we just accept minority rule. We live in what's meant to be a democratic country in a democratic area of the world. Yet we kind of forget that basis sometimes when we want to just accept the minority. And a lot of the time as well, when the minority is given what I feel sometimes undue ability in things and decision making, is people's fear of this cancel culture and wokeness that's became a thing over the last decade or two. And again, that's got to stop. And I feel it is stopping, to be honest with you. There seems to be a bit of a swing back to normality, thank God. But the woke and the righteousness, the self-righteous people, they're fighting hard against it. But that does not mean that people on the right side of this story should stop. We need to get society back in a place of normality, where we accept what is right and what is wrong. Because we're in a world now where somebody mentions gender or transgender or race or religion or global warming and all this stuff. And people just go, oh, we better just agree with that. Because if I don't agree with that, it might affect me negatively. Whether that's just somebody disagreeing with you nastily and saying something rude about you on social media, or losing your job, your income, or indeed, in some instances, your place in society. And these all stem again back to the original root of this conversation. And that is when we accept the minority as a default. And because of that, we need to stop. If the minority come to the table of society and say, we have an issue here, society should look at it. And society should consider if we can do it or not. The answer doesn't always need to be yes. I mean, it affects the majority of people, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe and the notification bell. But most important of all, unless you are one of these people who demand whatever the minority want has to be accepted by the majority, not you at all. But
everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.